It's time to get productive. Our beavers continue to live their best lives, but Tutopolis has a lot more to offer. Not only through abundant resources we have yet to capitalize on, but through a wealth of unemployed beavers just waiting for something to do. In this episode, we put those beavers to work, through industry. We will begin by refining metal, an important component for the Timberborn endgame, used in sluices and robotics. In addition, it will allow us to start harvesting Badwater, so that we can stop relying on the natural lay of the land and start terraforming, with explosions. And with that, we are back in Tutopolis. We do have one little thing to move past, though. It is the fact that we left last episode off with a bad tide approaching. Now, luckily, I think we can mostly just ignore it because we do have a few things I need to fix from last episode. First of all, I did not notice it until afterward, but we do have some of these chestnut trees that are still marked to be cut down, and we don't want that, so let me undo that before they start cutting these down and losing us chestnuts. Now, while we wait for the bad tide to be over, let's talk about our industry. We've already said we're going to place it up here on this plateau, but there are a few things that I want to do before we start building. Number one, we're going to be unlocking a lot of things today, and even with 1.3 thousand research points, I'm not sure it's going to be enough. So I am going to place down 2 more researchers. I'm just going to get those built and those going. And then the other thing that's going to be important to preempt is that last episode, when we rebuilt this whole area, we deleted a medical bed that used to be behind one of these houses over here, and we did not build any more into this area. Now, this has not been an issue yet because we actually don't currently have that many industries that can cause injuries, but that is about to change. Right now, I believe only the gear workshop and the lumber mill could actually cause our beavers injuries. But when we start doing things like smelting, which is down here under metal, smelter, that'll have a chance to cause beavers injuries. The explosive factory will have a chance to cause beavers injuries. So we are going to preempt that by coming over here, going to well-being and medical bed. We're going to build 2 here. And then I'm also actually going to build up 2 more platforms and put down 2 more medical beds. And hope that 4 medical beds will be more than enough to keep our beavers from languishing too long not working. I also did not include it in the last episode, but I did at one point want to clear up all of the rubble that was on the ground, and so I built these wood storages, but I do want to get rid of them eventually, so I'm going to set all of these to empty. And just kind of hope that within the next couple of episodes, those are dealt with. And with the end of the bad tide, we can first start off by readjusting our dams to the way they should be. But beyond that, we can get started working on our industry. Now, the important thing about everything we're going to build today, which is a smelter, a grist mill, an explosives factory, and a centrifuge. The most important issue we're going to face is that all of those need power. And that is going to cause an issue because, as you can see, our power generation is down here, and our industry landing is up here. So we are going to need to build something to transfer power from our dam, which is the Tanya Memorial Dam, and we are going to need something to bring that power all the way up to our landing. And to do that, we use power shafts, which work basically the same as we've used them here. But we are going up here, so we are going to need to unlock the upward power shaft, the vertical power shaft, and the downward power shaft. That will allow us to not only transfer power horizontally, but vertically. The other thing we're going to need to do to prep this site is we're going to need to get our beavers to come down here and make a path for our power lines to go down, because I'm not going to build them 3 up over here. That would just be insane. With our beavers doing that, we can move on to actually building our power line. With our original dam here, we just connected the power line straight through the water wheels. And that is fine. We could drag the power straight off of here by replacing this power shaft with a T intersection. But doing so would completely sever this water path, which may not be a big deal right now, but if we expand down here later on, which we plan to do, then it'll extend the path length for anyone to get down here. So we are going to try to preserve this underwater path as much as possible. What I'm going to do is build a little bridge here, and we will run our power line underneath this, because power shafts can occupy the same space as a platform. They can occupy the same space or be above a platform. There is no conflict between a platform and a power shaft. But putting the power shaft here means that we're not perfectly in line with this T-junction that we could build. So to save on resources, I am going to pull power from this lumber mill. The important thing to note about power in Timberborn is that it is not only transferred by power shafts and wheels or power generating structures, it is also transferred by buildings themselves. As long as a building like this lumber mill is powered, and that's not to say uses power, but is connected to a power line, as long as that is true, it will transfer power. If we were to build an aquatic farmhouse and put that catty corner to this lumber mill and then another lumber mill on the other side, it would still transfer power because we are chaining the buildings. But that also means that we can actually just pull power straight out of this lumber mill here. So if we have our beavers build this, as we can see, the power shafts here are spinning. They are being powered. Which means that all we have to do from this point is build a power line all the way up here. And just like that, we've taken power from our dam and taken it up to our plateau up here. Now, another thing I probably should have mentioned that I completely forgot to before was that power shafts can run like this through the water completely fine. They can also run through Badwater completely fine. There is no effect on them from being submerged in liquid. Even if we were to put this all the way up to 1 and completely submerge these power shafts, there's no adverse effect towards their ability to work, no matter how deep underwater they are. And with everything cleared up here, let's pull in our power and then set up a junction here and get to building our smelter. Now, a smelter is going to take 30 scrap metal. I believe it's the only building that takes scrap metal instead of refined metal. 20 gears and 50 planks. We have more than enough of all of that. We're just going to take our smelter and we're going to unlock it with science points. And then as they build this smelter, we're going to come over here with a pile. And we're going to set this to metal blocks. As usual, that is so that as soon as the smelter is finished, they will just move right to making metal blocks and putting them over here. Now, I do want to point out, because we can kind of see it happening here, with how close this pile is to this smelter, I'm actually not going to build a smaller pile here to move resources from this pile to this smelter. I do not think that that is a long enough distance to matter. What I am going to do for right now, though, going to build 2 small piles and a small warehouse. Logs, planks, and gears. I'm going to set them to prioritize those. And I'm going to set all of these to obtain. And that is just like when we built our dam over here. That is mostly just so that they will have an easier time building everything over here. There's no time constraint on this, obviously. We don't have to worry about running out of time to build our smelter. But it will just quicken things up and make it so that this does not take 20 years of our lives. With that, our smelter is complete. It is being staffed by Malelele. And I guess it's a good thing we built this log storage over here, because a smelter does require both logs and scrap metal. Which I guess makes sense, because these power shafts are not going to provide any sort of heat to melt scrap metal. The other thing that we will see if we click on one of these power shafts, even with our lumber mill and our gear workshop and our smelter, we are currently sitting at 370 power demand, with almost 800 power being generated by our dam. So we can continue to add quite a bit of industrial buildings over here before we even start to broach the topic of whether we need more power. But before we do that, let's move on to collecting Badwater. Our smelter here is producing metal blocks. Over here we have our Badwater River. This flows whenever the water up here flows. So it is the perfect place to harvest Badwater. If we come down here to water, alongside the water pump and the large water pump, we have the Badwater pump. Now this takes 250 science points, 10 gears, and 20 logs, but also 5 metal blocks, which is not going to be a problem for us, because now we have a smelter that is producing metal blocks. I am going to come over here and I'm going to place down 2 Badwater pumps. Obviously, these Badwater pumps will not be built immediately, because we currently don't even have enough metal blocks to build them. But very quickly, we will generate the metal blocks, and then our builders will come over here, they'll take those blocks, and they'll build these Badwater pumps, like they're doing here. While we are doing other things, we are going to let them build those Badwater pumps, and then just in case they finish them before we get back over here, we're going to build a medium tank, and we are going to set it to Badwater. It's going to take some time, but now our beavers are building towards having a functional way of harvesting and storing Badwater. And while they're doing that, we're going to move on to the second part of our industrial chain, which is Gristmills. Gristmills are a refining building. They take 1 beaver, 60 horsepower, and they turn wheat into flour, or cattails into cattail flour. So we already have wheat over here. And over here, we are storing more than enough wheat. What we do not have is cattails. Cattails are another aquatic crop, which means that to get cattails, we're going to need to build another aquatic farmhouse. So we're going to go over here. We're going to put down an aquatic farmhouse, and then we're just going to plant crops, cattail. And not all the way over to these at the moment, but we're just going to plant a sizable field in which we can harvest cattail. Obviously, we're then going to need to do our normal routine of setting up somewhere nearby they can store it, setting up a central location that they can store cattail, and then building somewhere that they can actually use it. So, we're going to go down here to Gristmill. It is 180 science points, 20 gears, 20 planks, and 40 logs. We're going to unlock it, and then back to back, we're going to build 2 of them. Now, these are going to take a little while for our builders to get built, because we are currently basically out of planks. While they are busy building these, we will set this up to store wheat flour, or to create wheat flour, and the other one we will set it up to create cattail flour. And much like before, we're going to set up warehouses. One of these will store wheat, and one of them will store cattails. And we will obviously need somewhere to store the output of these buildings. And we have been hit with a drought, which obviously means this whole thing's going to be on hold for a second. What I will do for now, while we wait, I will just set up the other 2 warehouses, since those only cost logs. These are going to store the end product. We probably will need to find a place to put warehouses to store our wheat flour and our cattail flour. But for these, I'm going to make them store cattail crackers and bread. Now, every single one of these isn't going to be accessible until they build these platforms. But they're also all not going to be necessary until they build these gristmills. There's also one other disconnect that may be readily apparent, which is that these gristmills are making flour. And what I have put over here is crackers and bread. And that is because to turn wheat and cattails into food, there is not only planting and harvesting and then turning them into flour, there is a third step. If we go here to food, we have bakeries. These are 160 science points. More gears, planks, and logs. But we can take these and we can just shove them in here. Then we will set one to bed. And then we will set one of them to bread. And we will set one of them to cattail crackers. And we will once again put small warehouses in front to store our flour. I'm hoping that for now, fingers crossed, we will not need to build huge storages for our flour. But realistically, I probably should build more warehouses. I'm not going to right now, though. I think that this will be enough for what we're doing right now, which is just trying to get bread and cattail crackers into the food storage. Ooh, and lucky us, the cattail is starting to grow, which means that by the time this grist mill that is making cattail flour is finished, we are actually going to have cattail for it to use. With the end of the drought, our water wheels are once again running. We are once again generating more horsepower than we need, but with 2 buildings and many platforms still needing to be constructed, we need planks. And not only do these buildings and these platforms need planks, the buildings we are going to build are also going to need planks. So rather than making you sit there and agonizingly listen to me vamp while we wait, I'm just going to skip us ahead to having some planks right now. And it has been maybe 5 or 6 days. I think we were on day 2, but we are currently sometimes at a surplus of planks. They are currently being eaten up by our gear workshop over here. That's fine. We need the gears as much as we need the planks. In the interim, both our bread and our cattail cracker production started, which did mean that our well-being jumped from 18 to 23. But now that we have started getting a surplus of planks, it's time to once again destroy that because we're going to come down here to landscaping. We're going to look at the explosives factory. This only takes 150 horsepower, takes one job, and it allows us to turn 5 Badwater into 1 explosive. It's also going to take 30 metal, we have more than enough, 30 gears, once again we have more than enough, and 30 planks. Now the one thing that I will point out, I will unlock this, but I'm going to place it here. Unlike these Gristmills, which got power directly from the smelter, this explosives factory, being on the other side of the path, is not going to have an immediate source of power. So instead, we are simply going to run our power back behind these warehouses, because warehouses are one of the only buildings that does not transfer power. And we will just drag this over here so that we can attach it to the explosives factory. We are going to once again make a T-junction. Now, I do not currently have any plans for this T-junction and where it might go, but I figure we will have more buildings over here that need power in the future, and it is better to plan ahead and stick a T-junction here already, instead of having to break down the power line later and stick the T-junction in at that point, which is more likely to cause issues where buildings are unpowered. So we are going to come over here. We're going to place this explosives factory. And then we are just going to run that power line directly to it. With our explosives factory built, we can see that it takes Badwater and it turns it into explosives. Our Badwater storage is only over here, but I'm still going to do our normal thing of placing a small tank and filling it with Badwater. And then over here, near where kind of our industrial items are all stored, I'm going to make a warehouse and fill it with explosives. And with that, we are now generating explosives, which seems like it is the end of what we had planned to do here, but there is actually one more step I want to take us through. If we look at landscaping, we can see that we have dynamite here, and there are a number of different types that we can unlock that do take a lot of research points. But if we mouse over dynamite, we can see just a regular stick of dynamite only takes explosives. But these two other ones, double dynamite and triple dynamite, which respectively destroy 2 or 3 down instead of just 1, these also take a second material. That is extract. Oh, I don't want to unlock double dynamite. No, thank you. So if we were to try to start terraforming right at this moment, we would only be able to place singular dynamite, and it would take 3 times as much dynamite to go down 3 levels as it would if we had triple dynamite. Now that will cost extract. For that, we go down here to water, and it's from a centrifuge. Extract is nothing more than Badwater and wood. It is in our best interest, if we can, because of the time it takes to produce an explosive, it is in our best interest to preserve explosives and use extract for terraforming. So that is exactly what we are going to do. A centrifuge, it takes 600 science points. We have more than enough. 30 metal, 40 gears, and 60 planks. We essentially have that. And the other thing is it is a powered building, so it takes 200 horsepower. We are currently sitting at 640 out of 800 horsepower, which means that we can build the centrifuge, and it will cause most of these, if everything is running all of the time over here, they will be operating at a slightly lower efficiency due to the fact that we have slightly less power than we need. Ultimately, it is not going to be an issue because, as we can see right now, this gristmill, it's just full up on everything. We could power this off and we regain that horsepower that we need, and now we have exactly as much as we need to run the centrifuge. So if we play a bit of whack-a-mole and turn things on and off as we need them, we are not running a worrying deficit on power. With our centrifuge underway, though, we are going to start producing extract. Now, extract is much like Badwater in that it is stored as a liquid. So we are going to build a medium tank, and we are just going to set that to store extract. And then once this is built and this is built, they will work in tandem, and we will have a system by which we can start terraforming to our heart's desire. Now, while I am thinking about it, because we are using the scrap metal over here, a couple of these ruins are actually on a higher level. We can see that they've eliminated a lot of them that are on this low level. I'm just going to set stairs to be built here, make them lower priority. Our builders will go over there and build that when they feel like it, and then they'll be able to harvest these higher level ones until they harvest all of them, and we'll move on. And while we are waiting for this to be built, let us just come over here and check. It does appear that all of our piles over here have successfully been emptied. So we will just get rid of these. And my shame will be deleted. While we're at it, looking at an aerial view of our colony, we have our farmhouse over here and our aquatic farmhouse over here that is producing wheat and cattail roots accordingly. If our beavers were to take the materials from either of these spots and move them over to the Gristmills, they have to go all the way around over here just to get there, when honestly the bird length between these is not at all that long. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to, there's already a great opportunity for this, connect this path up. And now if you're going from the aquatics farmhouse, your path is literally that short, as opposed to having to go all the way up here past the central hub and then over here. I'm so glad that this rooftop lodge will now have a fantastic view of both explosives and radioactive waste. What a good way to spend the night. And just like that, our centrifuge is spinning and our extract is building up in this tank. Which means it is time to call this episode, but we have accomplished a lot. We have taken our power and moved it across our colony from our dam to our production plateau. We have built a smelter so that we can start to refine our scrap metal into blocks of metal. We have started to harvest Badwater to use for explosives and extract. We have begun to harvest cattails. And we have built Gristmills so that we can utilize both those cattails and the flour from last episode, take them over to our bakery, and turn them into both crackers and bread. And to top it all off, we have built an explosives factory and a centrifuge so that we can not only terraform with dynamite, but also with double and triple dynamite as well. And with all that, it is time to finally terraform that which I've wanted to terraform since the very beginning of this series. We are going to blow a hole from our river to this lake, making a huge lake that will irrigate a large portion of this area over here and store more water. So as I set up to press this detonate button, please like, comment, and subscribe. As always, Tutopolis will return, and let's hit this button. Now that is what I am talking about with terraforming. With that, goodbye.